My professor, one of the federal prosecutors helping convict Timothy McVeigh of the Oklahoma City bombing.
It's the mask, it's the layers, it's the stories we tell ourselves about who we think we need to be.
I've always prioritized having a life outside of work.
I don't know if you had any courses that even spoke about.
No, not at all. The emails are not going to stop. The to-do list doesn't end, but our time eventually does.
The last 20 years of your life for the first 65 years, if you're lucky.
So many people in life are not failing because they're not trying.
And how do I know unless I try?
How beautiful is it that I can take something tragic in my life and turn it into something that has a positive ripple effect?
It's the scarcity mindset. You see everyone else's success almost as taking away from your own.
Did you get told that you were argumentative when you were a child?
I was told I would make. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Non-Billable Hours podcast. My name is Odette, I'm the host, and this is the podcast where we talk to current lawyers, former lawyers, future lawyers, maybe one day, about everything but the practice of law. So if you're wondering what that means, you've come to the right place. I have my very first international guest tonight, and I am so excited to be sitting down and talking with Brandy Wilson-Edwards. She is an attorney in the States. And not only is she an attorney, she is also a motivational speaker, a wellness advocate, a certified yoga and mindfulness instructor. She calls herself a multi-passionate individual, and I don't think there's any better way to describe her. Brandy's goal is to empower you to be a zealous advocate for yourself while challenging you to pursue your potential and make courageous choices. Her life mantra, which I love, is be strong and courageous. And you and I are going to meet her right now. She's virtual because she's in America. Let's go.
Let's get to it.
Hi, Brandy. So this is my first time recording video by myself, and I almost forgot to hit record on the camera.
That was awkward.
Well, I want to start off super general, just to kind of get to know you and your background a little bit. So I want to know, what drew you initially to the practice of law, and why did you go to law school?
I, from a very young age, knew that I wanted to be an attorney. I specifically wanted to be a prosecutor once I learned that that was an option, because I wanted to be an advocate for those who needed it. Mm-hmm. And I saw a lot of people that needed an advocate at various times in their lives and didn't have one, and felt extremely passionate about it. I was interested in criminal law, so I majored in criminal justice in undergrad. I interned with the U.S. Marshals when I was in college.
No way. That's so cool.
It was really fun. Then I interned with the DA's office when I was in law school. The trajectory of my career, I was setting it up to be a prosecutor, ended up not going into criminal law. But when I reflect on it, I'm glad that I had the passion to go and pursue something specific, because that passion is what kept me in law school every single day when I wanted to quit the first year. About every other day, I was like, I have a degree. Why am I putting myself through the stress? It took a long time, but I realized dreams can change, goals can change. And it's the initial goal or dream that gets you to take action, that builds that momentum in your life. And it can really set you up for so many other things if you're open to it.
You just touched on so many things that I want to talk about. I love that you worked for the U.S. Marshals.
I'm going to divide up and search every house, hotel, hospital, back road, and backwater for Mr. Mark J. Roberts.
Okay, so you always wanted to be a prosecutor. So you're in the States. You're actually my first international guest. I've only spoken with Canadian lawyers so far, so I'm so excited that I have an American lawyer to talk to. And so here we call it the Crown, because you work for the government and you prosecute on behalf of the King of England. So you would be trying criminal cases, right? That was your original goal?
Yes.
Okay. So is that the type of law that you always wanted to do, even throughout law school?
Yes. I loved my trial practice class. I loved every second of it. And it was really amazing because my professor was one of the federal prosecutors who ended up helping convict Timothy McVeigh of the Oklahoma City bombing.
Oh my God.
And to be able to learn from a female prosecutor, but also very prominent. She's actually the DA right now of Oklahoma City. It was an amazing experience. And When I graduated, it was extremely hard to find a job with everything that was going on in our economy at the time. I ended up finding a job that I am still incredibly grateful for. So much of life, we can make sense of it looking back when we can connect the dots. I've created a new path for myself because of all of that. It was hard to accept at the time that I wasn't pursuing what I originally thought I would be, but I realized I can help other people in a different way. And that's really at the end of the day why we go to law school, to help people. And we can do it with a variety of titles and a variety of different professions, and we can be multi-passionate.
And did you have any role models? Like, was anyone in your family, or do you have any close family friends that were lawyers that you looked up to, or was you were just blazing your own path, not really seeing what anyone else was doing with it?
I was creating and following my own path. I did not know any attorneys. There were not any in my family. I probably found some inspiration and drive from shows that I may have seen on TV. Attorneys were successful. I know that I didn't grow up with a lot of money and had limited experiences to certain things. And I grew up in really small towns. It wasn't about the money, but I think as a young child, I saw it as maybe a way out, a way to be successful, a way to help in a meaningful way.
Was there any pressure from anyone to you, or you were like, you decided that you wanted to be a lawyer?
I would say that I came to it on my own, and I don't know if you can relate, but I feel like many people in the legal profession can. Did you get told that you were argumentative when you were a child?
I was told I would make an excellent lawyer.
How come?
It's an even longer story.
Are you my dad's brother?
What's your record for consecutive questions asked?
Right. And I feel like so many of us, myself included, I was told that. The seed could have been planted in that way, but I was actually speaking at a pre-law conference here in the Dallas area. And I asked the students, and pretty much every one of them raised their hand. You know, when I asked, how many of you have been told you'd make a great lawyer because you're argumentative?
Good.
And I reframed it, and it really resonated with this one student. She even posted about it on LinkedIn, how she found it helpful. But essentially it was reframing it as, instead of being argumentative, see it as you're really good and passionate about articulating your point and your perspective.
And that's what we do as lawyers, as attorneys. Like, I find the most successful ones and the most persuasive ones are not the ones who just sit there and argue for the sake of arguing, but they are there to help you see where they're coming from. And even if they don't convince you, they tell you, I'm in litigation, for example, so they tell you how they will convince a jury or a judge about where they are coming from. And that you don't have to yell, you don't have to scream, and you don't have to be super aggressive. But like you said, you can articulate your point and be clear about it. And that's an amazing reframe.
Thank you. I wish I would have known that myself when I was much younger.
I know, but you're learning it now and you're still
Right.
young. So you've got that, that perspective to carry you through the rest of your life now, right? You're multi-passionate because you're a lawyer and you're a motivational speaker and you're a yoga instructor. Did you determine that you wanted to do motivational speaking and yoga after you became an attorney, or were those things that you had discovered before law school?
Those came after. While I do not teach yoga at a studio regularly, I do like to incorporate it into some of my events when possible at a speaking event. I did one for an attorney wellness event, and we did a yoga session beforehand, and then we went into a workshop. Yeah. So it's fun being able to infuse yoga, which I love, with engagements and things like that. But the speaking actually was born from burnout, because I found myself in this place of checking all of the boxes, getting to a place professionally where I feel like I was proud and I felt accomplished, but I still felt like something was missing. And I think a lot of that is because I didn't go into practicing criminal law. And I realized I needed to find fulfillment doing something else outside of practicing law, because I was in this space of deciding, do I stay in law? Do I go into a different practice area? There were some days I just thought, let me quit and go be a barista because I'm very over it.
Try?
A large black coffee.
A what?
Large black coffee.
Do you mean a venti?
No, I mean a large.
He means a venti. Yeah, the biggest one you got.
Venti is large.
Before I started speaking, I was posting inspirational and motivational content online. It was well received. And so over the years, I found clarity after going to a lot of events that were non-legal related. A lot of my friends, both personally and professionally, are not in the legal community, other than amazing people like yourself that I've connected with on LinkedIn. I would go to these conferences that were all based on personal development and becoming the best version of yourself. I was so inspired and I was taking action, and I thought, I want to do that. I want to take my inspiration offline and do it in person. And then I just decided I want to be a speaker, and I just started figuring it out. Told everyone what my goals and dreams were with that. And so then it was just a positive ripple effect from there. The first year I started speaking, it was later that year I also started to do my yoga teacher training, because that was very instrumental in my journey. And I just thought, let me add all the tools in my tool belt so I can gain skills and incorporate them however I want to with whatever it is that I decide to do next.
I'm starting to notice this trend when I talk to lawyers who have discovered either teaching or practicing or both. I find that they have such an energy that is so different from, I won't say the typical lawyer, because I don't want to like put down our profession, but I just find them to just be more centered and like a calming presence and very self-reflective, which I guess is a big part of the practice of yoga. Did you start doing yoga then after you became a lawyer, or was that something you were always interested in? And then when you were like, I want to be a motivational speaker, I'm going to get my teacher's certificate as well?
I started practicing yoga after law school, and one of my friends, it was a hot yoga class.
Oh.
And I went into it not for all of the things that you just described, to be centered. I did not go in for that. I did not go in to prompt any self-reflection. I went in for the physical benefits. It was also around the time where I was unintentionally beginning my own self-love journey, because for years I had struggled with body image and self-acceptance. A lot of my initial inspirational content online started coming from a self-love angle. And then I was also reading personal development and these non-legal related books, and started loving reading again, because law school, I feel like a lot of attorneys stop enjoying reading for fun.
A book? What do you want a book for?
To read.
To read? Why would you want to read when you got the television set sitting right in front of you?
That is kind of how I got into yoga, and I started to stay for many other reasons.
It's funny you say that, because that's the reason that I started going to yoga as well. I saw it as a workout. I was like, okay, cool. It's like Pilates, or, going for a run or something like that. Like, it's just for the physicality and to get strength. And yeah, like you said, like change your body composition. And then you start realizing as you're going through it, especially if you get exposed to really amazing instructors, that is almost one of the last priorities in what yoga means to me now, which is like, I don't do yoga because I think it's going to give me a six pack. You know what I mean? Like, I do it when I need that mental break. I do it when my body's craving like the movement and the focusing on my posture and things like that. And that's totally not the reason I started, or so many others started, right? And then you discover that like it is what you give to it. What you give to it, it'll give you back in droves, right?
Right. And I would be interested to learn what your experience has been in yoga. I started doing hot yoga, which was very strenuous, and it required a lot of effort. And at the end of class for Shavasana, I could not get up fast enough. It was really challenging to stay still. Yeah. And it wasn't until yoga teacher training where I was forced to take other types of classes where it was slower and more restorative. And it took me a long time to come around to it. But now I can have a home practice where it's gentle yoga. It doesn't have to be anything where I feel like I'm burning 500 calories and I'm doing something that is extremely challenging. So I'm curious, with your yoga experience, was it similar or different, or have you come around to more restorative, or did you always like a slower pace? Or
I think I've always enjoyed a bit of a slower pace for yoga, because I grew up doing like competitive sports that were all very intense. So a lot of like very high cortisol sports.
Well, that's good. And I feel like attorneys, definitely could benefit from a slower pace because it's the exact opposite of our professional lives. For your listeners, I would just encourage them, if they did not like their first yoga class, there's so many styles of yoga. There's so many different instructors and studios. Just keep exploring different ones and you might find one you like.
And you said that you tend to incorporate it when you're doing like workshops or speaking. So do you find that it does bring people into a more receptive space to kind of utilize the time you have together more effectively if you like do a bit of grounding, or how does that work for you?
I think so. And for example, when I did the yoga session at an attorney wellness retreat that Texas did, it was interesting hearing some of the participants talk about it before we were going immediately into our workshop. They said it was perfect what they needed for that afternoon because it was already challenging for them to get away for 2 days to begin with. And when you're sitting in various sessions all day long, just having a moment to slow down, to do some self-reflection, notice things, the self-awareness piece is so important that I think it really was helpful going into our workshop. And it doesn't have to be an entire session. I did a CLE where I just did some chair yoga since it was virtual. It was something really simple. We did it for 5 minutes and then a short meditation. And fun fact with that, I was recording that at my house. And then that was a day some contractor was around outside.
Excuse me, I just wanted to let you know that your power is fixed, but the phone lines are a mess. It's going to take Ma Bell a couple of days to patch them up, especially around the holidays.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm in the middle of this CLE, and it was also noticing the sounds around you. So it was very perfect.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with mindfulness is everyone thinks it's about silence and not having thoughts and being still and doing nothing. But mindfulness is noticing what's around you and then bringing yourself back to the present moment.
I totally agree. And I think that's such an amazing thing to kind of bring into not only your everyday, but our legal practices as well, right? Because there can be so much noise. I was working on some written submissions today for a hearing and writing, and I kept allowing myself to get distracted by my email. And that task switching really can take a lot of energy out of you, but it also like so much of what I do is not that urgent. Like none of those emails needed to be tended to right away, but I allowed that noise to kind of take me out of the present moment. Even if you're working on something that, might be a little stressful, you can kind of like drown out the noise and just allow yourself to focus on it. So when you say that you're multi-passionate, how have you learned to kind of embrace that being, that way of living, rather than sometimes as lawyers or attorneys, we feel maybe pressured to become a specialist and just focus on just one thing.
A laser.
So what was that journey like for you to embrace having multiple passions both in and outside of the law?
I have found different passions over time, but I feel like it was really easy for me because when I went to law school, while I knew that's what I wanted to do, I was still a passionate person before I went to law school about other things. I had other interests and hobbies. Now, when I went to law school, my life was devoted to that. I suppose I just always knew I was different as well going to law school and didn't feel like I was like everyone else, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. And I embrace being different. I embrace being able to do many different things and having many interests. But I do understand, especially in the legal profession, how our identity is so attached to what we do and our title. And I'm not saying that I don't attach some of my identity to that. It's part of my life. It's a big part of my life, but it's not the only part of my life. And I've always had an identity outside of law.
Yeah. What you say is so spot on. Did you find when you started law school any pressure to kind of shed other parts of you, or were you always pretty steadfast in who you were?
I think it was a mix of both because when you're going to law school, you are meeting everyone for the first time. Everyone's different. Everyone's similar but different. And there is so much pressure, even unspoken, but to really conform and be like everybody else. And also, too, I don't know about you, but I did not want to stand out really in law school because I didn't want to get called on. It was a stressful experience getting called on in class. It was so interesting though, because that was the exact opposite of who I was in college. I loved interacting with my professors and engaging in conversation. And when I went to law school, it was completely different. And so in answering your question, yes, there were certain aspects where I did conform and change who I was. And looking back, I don't really like that. But there's so much that law school, I think, does to us and changes us for good or bad. It teaches you how to think. And I'm grateful for that. It's hard to turn that off sometimes and not always have the legal brain.
Yes.
But yes and no to answer your question.
Totally fair. And that's the way I felt as well. When I started law school, I had some like side passions and things that I was involved in. And whether it was my own, internal voice saying that's not what a serious law student engages in on the side, or whether it was actual people who didn't really know what they were talking about saying, you're not really going to continue that, hobby in law school, are you? Like, that's not very serious.
I want you to pay close attention to the following over-the-top eye roll.
And then, you become a lawyer. I've been doing this for 10 years now. And you see some of the most like respected lawyers are like, they go wake surfing on the weekend, or they're musicians, or they're doing all sorts of things that aren't quintessentially like law. And I don't see anyone taking them less seriously. If I could go back and tell myself, well, I don't know, because I am where I am and I'm happy about where I am. But if I could go back and tell myself one thing, I think one of them would be like, try to keep those parts of you that got you here. You don't have to shed your old self just because you're trying to build a new part of you.
Yes. And I think what you just illustrated is why so many people in the legal profession are unhappy, because they did shed so many things that made them who they are, or interests that they had, or hobbies or passion projects. And maybe it was not intentionally. It was maybe just because the work and the hours and the stress part of being a happy attorney is having things that you enjoy outside of what you do.
Absolutely. And so does that factor into your mantra, which I love, is be strong and courageous? What does that mean to you? And has that changed? How does that shape your life outside of work?
So that life mantra for me came from a really good friend passing away in a tragic car accident. I was at his funeral and the preacher read the scripture, Joshua 1:9, which is about being strong and courageous in your life, not terrified or discouraged. And the preacher said that it was his favorite scripture. I didn't know that. And it was a very difficult time in my life for other reasons other than him passing away. And I clung on to it. I just thought, I'm going to be strong and courageous during this time in my life. And I just kept continuing to be strong and courageous. When I think about that and being strong and courageous, I know that he's no longer here to do that. And his birthday was a few days ago, which is why I said it's meaningful to be asked this question this particular week. So it's part of keeping his legacy alive because he was so important to me. And so when I think about being strong and courageous, we all know people that are taken away from us too soon. Like, we have a responsibility to do what we can in our lives right now with the opportunities that we have, or the opportunities that we can create, because every day we wake up is a gift. So often I think it's easy to think that we have time and wait until next week or next month or next year, the 10 years, but we never know how much time we have. And it's so important to live our life with less regret. And so the way that we can do that is we're courageous and we have to believe in ourselves. And it's just my life mantra that I've adopted, that I post about frequently, that I share with others. How beautiful is it that I can take something tragic in my life and turn it into something that has a positive ripple effect in my life and the lives of others?
Thank you for sharing that. That's so sweet. And I'm so sorry to hear about your friend.
Thank you.
Any age, it's hard to lose people. Saying goodbye to someone your age at a young age, I had to do that this past year. And it's tough. It's really tough seeing someone so full of life and light and energy being taken so soon. I listen to a lot of running podcasts. And one of my favorite ultra runners, Sally McRae, literally today, the podcast topic was about stop making excuses and stop putting off things. And her whole message was, you don't get to choose how many days you have. You have today. So you can say, I'll do this when I'm better at X, or I'll do this when I feel better about my body, or I'll do this trip when I have someone to go with me. And she's like, you don't get to decide how many days you have. That's out of your hands. So all you have is today. So if you can just do something today to make yourself joyful, to make the people around you joyful, make today count. And some days we're going to have bad days. Like some days, I have a panic attack in the morning and that's the day, but the next day, don't let that day define what the next day is, right? Treat every day as a new thing, because the sun rises. And like you said, you wake up, it's a good day. So that must guide a lot of what you do, I bet, in your everyday life.
It does. And I want to acknowledge what you shared, which was about your friend passing away as well. And I think that, with us both having experienced that, and I imagine every single one of your listeners has as well, in practical application of how that guides my life and how it can guide all of our lives, is every single day we can ask ourselves, what would the most courageous version of ourselves do? That it doesn't have to be this grand action, the biggest, most courageous thing that you could do, but in having a conversation, what would the most courageous version of yourself do? What would you ask for? What would you say? Would you apologize about something? Would you ask for a raise? Would you switch a practice area? Would you make time for that passion project? Would you set and enforce a boundary? The options are limitless as far as what would the most courageous version of yourself do. And it can change every single day.
Like literally life-changing. Like when you start to think about who you want to be and what you can do what would that version of you do, right? That's how I think of it sometimes, but I've never thought about it in like, what would the most courageous version of myself, even today, coming to the studio by myself without my ride or die to like help me set up the cameras and the lights. I was like scared. I was like, what if I mess something up? And all I thought about was like, I want to be the person that can do things. I want to be the person that I want to look up to. Like I want to be my own role model. I want to be my own good example. And that person doesn't be scared, but like do it anyways.
Right. Well, and that is the part of courage, is you have that fear, you have the doubt, but you take the action anyway. I trust myself to figure it out. Right. Or handle whatever happens. I trust myself to handle whatever happens. And so, you showing up today by yourself at the studio, figuring it out, is you were capable and you can figure things out. And if something happens, you'll just roll with it. And we really got connected because one of your podcast guests shared your podcast on one of my posts on LinkedIn, which was the first sentence, or the first sentence of my caption was, more attorneys should host podcasts. And I think what you're doing is amazing. It's very courageous to have a podcast and have these candid conversations with other legal professionals. And, before you started a podcast, you didn't know how to do one. You figured it out. And I think that that's amazing.
That means a lot. Thank you. And it wouldn't exist without people supporting it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and without people being generous with their time and their busy schedules and bringing their light and their knowledge. And so I'm so grateful anytime someone agrees to sit down with me. I do think it is important to talk about not only what we're good at, but what we're always working on, what's scary, what we suck at. And something you said earlier about, you decided you wanted to become a motivational speaker and do it in a certain way. And you're like, and then I decided that I was going to do everything I could to figure it out. No one came up to you and said, Brandy, here's how you become a motivational speaker. Here's the playbook. Here's who you're going to talk to. Here's who you're going to email. You had to figure all of that stuff out yourself, right?
I did.
Yeah.
And I'm still figuring it out 6 years into it, because life is a journey and we always have room to improve and grow, and there's no destination point. And really all of it, the point of it is the journey. We have these goals and dreams and this destination that we can check it off when we get there. But then when we get there, what happens? We maybe aren't as content. And so I'm still working on embracing the journey, appreciating the journey, the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows, because that is what really the experience is about. Not, you're a runner, not necessarily just crossing the finish line, but the training and the process of becoming the runner and who you become during that process, training for those races.
Hey, we got a runner!
In your legal career, was there a moment where you had that realization, like, oh, it doesn't matter what my title is or what my salary is or where my office is, there's more personal development I want to do outside of my career? Like,
I think it was just a gradual discovery of a combination of things, of reading books, attending events, going to yoga, having a life outside of law. I've always prioritized having a life outside of work. I know a lot of people say life-work balance or work-life balance. I like to call it life-work integration. So it merges, and I say life first, life before work, although it doesn't always work out that way, and it's not always 50-50. I think my love for personal development was just gradual, but I started to feel obsessed with it, about learning and growing and improving. And, I know that we have unlimited potential to become the next best version of ourselves. But also in pursuing that, it's important that we accept who we are in the moment and that we appreciate where we are in the moment, because it's really easy to get caught up chasing who we want to be, who we want to become, what we want to do. And so I know all of those things, and I have to remind myself to be present and appreciate the moment while I'm working on getting to where I'm going.
There's like that whole, you can be a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. You can be amazing and you can be exactly where you are, and that's exactly where you're supposed to be right now. But that's not to say that there's not things that we all want to improve on. When you think about your life work integration, which I do love, being an attorney is stressful. Like, there's no matter what you practice, like, I know most jobs carry their own stressors, but law is its own, unique unicorn in that way. Mm-hmm. Do you find that the yoga and the mindfulness help you, and how do you incorporate that into stressful days or stressful times in your work life?
The yoga and mindfulness definitely help, but also I made a decision to stop drinking alcohol.
Yes.
And I feel like that has been amazing in lowering my cortisol just on how I handle stress. When you stop drinking alcohol, you can avoid things by distracting yourself, but you really are confronted with all the things that you might want to escape from. So I feel like that has really helped in how I manage my stress, because I choose to manage it in empowering ways rather than disempowering ways like I used to.
I remember we talked about that on LinkedIn, because you were so open about that part of your journey, which I think is really inspiring. But I'm always trying to be like, do I want it because it's there? Or do I want it because I truly want it? And I think even like checking yourself in that moment. But what are some ways that you find really help kind of take the edge off, that you used to maybe look to, a glass of whatever to, that you now find are better for you overall?
I think it's so important that everyone does what works for them, because I know myself, and I don't think I could be as mindful as you are being when it comes to drinking.
But it's all the time, but about 95% of the time I can check it.
Right. But I think that that's great that you can, because, people need to do what works for them, and you're doing what works for you. As far as how I manage my stress and cope with it in different ways, one thing that I found, and it's not just when I'm stressed, but when I'm feeling happy or I want to do something and have a creative outlet, is I love painting abstract art. Oh, the thing about abstract art is it doesn't have to be anything specific, and you can just paint whatever you're feeling. And the beautiful thing about art is how it translates to other people and how they perceive it and how it makes them feel. And so I might paint something, maybe if I'm upset, but it might still be happy colors, and it might make someone else feel happy when they look at it, because art is subjective. And while we are painting, however we're feeling, I feel like it makes us feel better. Going to art museums and looking at art, I think it's a great activity to practice self-awareness and noticing how does this make me feel and why?
Which we need to reflect on more. And I'm starting to get better at it, but I let the tiniest little thing like throw me off, like an email from another lawyer who might be angry. And then I take their anger and I internalize it and I let it sit with me all day. When it's like, if you just take yourself out of that for a moment in whatever way it works for you, you can go about and have a good rest of your day, and you don't necessarily need to internalize other people's stress. But outlets for that is really important too. And it's funny how a physical outlet can help with something that's a mental stressor.
I think with physical movement, just going for a walk outside, or, sometimes if you're maybe feeling anxious about something or frustrated or angry, a really good workout, like an intense workout where you're sweating a lot, moving your body a lot. It's almost like you release it. And I think you can do that in a variety of different ways, just with the walk to clear your head. But movement is great as well, in addition to the creative outlets.
So many lawyers look at success as giving everything, all of us, to our practices, and not leaving much else, for the rest of us, the people in our lives, the people we love, and our hopes and dreams separate and apart from our practice. But do you think that there's a shift in the league? Because you're in America, I'm in Canada. I know the legal landscape can be a little bit different. But do you see any shifts in kind of what it means to be a success in the legal industry where you are? There
is a shift, although it's very slow.
Yeah.
I can see that shift from professionals that I'm connected to on LinkedIn out that are in Texas or all over in a variety of different areas, just from what they are posting and how they are showing up and how they choose to practice and work and redefine success on their own terms. So there is a shift. And that's one thing that I love about LinkedIn is how it has allowed me to connect with so many like-minded professionals, because I've always felt so different than many attorneys that I know. In redefining success and how I prioritize myself and encourage others, it is to become your most important client, because we are prioritizing everybody else. And at a firm, you're going to be prioritizing your clients. They run your day, your schedule, and all of those things. And while that's important to be an advocate for your client and all of the things that come with that, you have to be your most important client. And that allows you to show up better, to practice law better, to be a better attorney, to be a better colleague, become your most important client. And it's easier said than done. But I think that it's the gradual actions, the gradual changes that just over time compound. And what that looks like for every person is going to be different. But if you can just start with that question or that goal and figure out how to reverse engineer that, there could be a lot more happier attorneys and different definitions of success and what it means to be an attorney.
Treating your own needs just as important as you would a client's. Like if you have a workout, you have coffee with a friend, you have something, treat it as though it is you're tending to someone else's need. Because why don't we love ourselves as much as we love others sometimes?
Or prioritize ourselves as much as we prioritize others, in making everybody else's needs a non-negotiable, but not ours. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Not everybody has that mindset and thinks, working long hours, working every weekend, being busy is a badge of honor.
Busy business lady whose life is missing something, but she doesn't realize it because she's so busy with business.
No, I cannot make that business meeting. I've got a different business meeting at 3, and we'll be doing business there.
I disagree. There is more to life than just working. It's to live your life and to enjoy it. And so, some attorneys work on vacation, what's the point of going if you can't enjoy it? And work will always be there. The emails are not going to stop. The to-do list doesn't end, but our time eventually does. And it's important that we take time to prioritize ourselves, our happiness, and our well-being. For ourselves, for our family, for our friends, for our clients, it just has a positive ripple effect.
Our time runs out, but the work doesn't. And it reminds me of something that my partner says sometimes, where he's like, work is a faucet. If you leave the faucet on, there's always going to be work pouring out. You have to be able to turn it to the right when you're done at the end of the day or when you're going on vacation or whatever. And it'll still be there. When you turn it back on, it'll come pouring out. But if you just keep letting it pour out, it is endless.
Right.
It is endless. And we are not endless vessels for the stress, for the tasks, for everyone else's. You know, as lawyers, as attorneys, all we do is solve problems for other people. That's literally our job. Get paid to take on other people's stress and try to find solutions. There's only so much you can take on before, like you said, you know, you burn out. Was there a burnout moment for you where you decided, okay, now I really need to prioritize Brandy?
My burnout is very different, I feel like, than what people think about burnout being, which is working long hours. I started to experience burnout because I wasn't fulfilled. And I think that's overlooked a lot when people talk about burnout, but burnout is caused for many different reasons. It shows up in many different ways. And so speaking originally was a passion project. The amazing thing about it was I started to realize things that I did like about practicing once I started finding fulfillment doing the speaking. But burnout is something that I feel like many professionals experience. Not everybody does something about it. And then it just continues to get worse and worse. And I feel like that's why we have a lot of issues in our profession with substance abuse, depression, suicide, a lot of things that are uncomfortable to talk about. But that's why I'm such an advocate for doing things outside of work. But if you have all of this money and success on paper, but you don't have the happiness or you don't have the time or the freedom to do certain things, and what is the point of it all?
Yep. What are you going to do with all of that money if you're always working and then you save it up for retirement? But I'm so scared that if I do that, by the time I hit traditional retirement age, I haven't taken care of myself. So I can't travel the way I want to.
Right.
I'm not well enough to do the adventures and have the fun and have the experiences that I wish I could, because I didn't spend the last, 30 years of my career actually taking care of the vessel that is me. And so when people save up all of their fund for retirement, I used to think that way. I used to think, okay, I'm going to grind for 30 years. And once I'm retired, I can enjoy life. The last 20 years of your life, for 65 years, if you're lucky to live that long, right? So many people don't. I love your story because you saying that you need to advocate for your own well-being as much as you would advocate for a client is something that I think like that could be a whole course at law school.
I would love to teach that course one day.
Good. That's something we don't learn. I don't know if you had any courses that even spoke about.
No, not at all.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
We all learned things the hard way. So we would have attorneys come in and talk to us in law school. And I feel like that's where we got a little more honesty about the profession. But even then, I think it was still not fully transparent because I feel like a lot of attorneys don't always want to be candid with pre-law students or law students to, not avoid scaring them going into the profession. And some attorneys, I think, take the opposite approach and like, no, don't do it.
Don't do it.
I'm glad I went to law school. I am grateful for my profession, and I would do it all over again. But I think I wish I would have known more going into it eyes wide open of what to expect. And so I'm doing my part of what I can to do that for pre-law students and law students and show them a different way of practicing and what's possible and have candid conversations.
One of the best role models I had as a law student was a cousin of mine who's older, and he's an academic. So it's a bit different. But I saw the way that he was a legal professional, and it was very different from the examples I saw here in Toronto. Our like big fancy law firms are all on Bay Street, downtown Toronto. So we call them like the Bay Street law firms. And what my cousin Chris was doing with his legal degree was so different from what I was seeing the Bay Street people do. But he was just one example. And then I had like hundreds of examples of these people in like, the ivory towers with the corner offices and, billing 2,400 hours a year. And that was most of the example that I had. And I feel like, if you work in a big city in the US, it's probably quite similar.
Yes. And when I went to law school, I knew that attorneys worked a lot.
Yeah.
and that they were stressed a lot.
Yeah.
And I felt like they didn't have a lot of time for things.
Yes.
And I was really concerned about that, knowing that I was going to law school. And I knew that I did not want that to be my life. And I really just made a promise to myself going into it. I'm going to do this. This is what I feel passionate about. And at any time, if I feel like I am compromising the life that I want to have and live for this profession, then I'm willing to do something different.
Testify!
So I think because I went in with that mindset, I knew that I would have other options. I didn't know what those options would be, but I felt confident that I could walk away if I needed to or wanted to. And I know that's so much easier to say than to actually do, especially with the identity piece. And I feel like that is why so many attorneys will stay in law when they really would prefer to do something else. And there's so many transferable skills. There's just a different way to practice law, and it doesn't have to be what was always done in the past because that's how it was done. It just takes time. It takes being courageous, being able to try and pursue something new.
You can be compassionate and yourself and still be bright and smart and successful. And you don't need to dull any part of yourself down just because it's not the exact version of you that would show up in a courtroom. When I first became a lawyer, I thought that courtroom me needed to be all me. You know what I mean? There couldn't be these various versions of me. And one of the reasons I'm so happy I started this podcast is because I get to meet people like you who show that you can be multifaceted, like you said, multi-passionate. You're not just a lawyer. You are a lawyer, and you are a good one, and you care, and you can do your job really well. But then you can do all of these other things. Like, there doesn't just have to be room for one version of you.
And I think that's where it's easy to forget that we are a person in a profession.
Yeah.
We are a person in a profession, but somehow in the legal community, it takes over our entire identity. And it's like you have to be this one thing.
I know. And I don't know why that happens in the law. Like, what? I would love to find out where that came from, because it's so weird that we as lawyers and attorneys like think that that's the only version of ourselves we can ever be, ever.
You know, I think it starts in law school, because I feel like everybody goes to law school with these individual traits and characteristics and personalities, and they all still have them. But there's something that happens in law school where everybody starts to conform and be who we think we're supposed to be. So people gradually start changing.
A legal education means you will learn to speak in a new language. You will be taught to achieve insight into the world around you.
Intentionally or unintentionally. And then 3 years pass and you're kind of confused how it all happened. And you're like, wait, I was a person before I went to law school. So I think it's this subtle shift that starts happening in law school. And then we're surrounded with legal professionals. And then you don't know any different when you get absorbed in this world. And then people like you and I are doing what we can to show that it can be different.
It's the masks, it's the layers, it's the stories we tell ourselves about who we think we need to be when we're already enough. Like, we're here because we are who we are. And we don't need to change ourselves just because of the profession we're in. Obviously, I'm not going to walk into court and talk to a judge the way I would talk to my best friend on the couch. But
of course,
there's room for those multiple dimensions of ourselves within ourselves, right? And you're right. I think a lot of it starts in law school, because I don't know about your undergrad, but my undergrad, I never felt I had to change who I was in my history and anthropology program.
There's something that happens in law school that really changes people. And I was having a conversation with an attorney a few years ago, and I didn't realize it until our conversation. And I don't know how it came up or what prompted it, but I realized how law school started to affect my confidence, because it was so competitive and everyone's smart and intelligent and then you're all in the same room and you're trying to be in the top 10% or things like that and compete for jobs. And, it just really started to affect my confidence. And imposter syndrome wasn't a term being used when I was in law school, but I think that's where it kind of started. And maybe not everybody has that experience, but many attorneys that I have spoken with when they're speaking candidly will agree they've experienced something similar.
It's funny you say that because no one would ever admit that in law school, but everyone I've spoken to since starting the podcast, and this has come up, everyone I've spoken to has felt the same way. And you're right, because in undergrad, I feel like there's a little bit of competition in that, like I would, see what grades my friends were getting on a paper in a certain class or whatever, and kind of compare it to how I was. But I knew that wasn't going to affect what job I got that summer.
Right.
Or the firm that I eventually wanted to get. But in law school, like everything, it's like, okay, you did this on this paper, you got this on this class, or you won this competition. Who else did what? Because you're all applying for the same jobs. You all want the same kind of thing. And it's almost like it's the scarcity mindset of there's only so much success and there's only so many positions at firms. And you see everyone else's success almost as taking away from your own.
And it wasn't collaborative, where you would not find people unless there was an established study group where people were getting together, but nobody was sharing outlines. No one was really trying to help each other because it was so competitive.
We've already assigned the outlines. The answer is no.
But yeah, that scarcity mindset where it just wasn't collaborative. And it's the opposite of all the things that I feel like I am, where I have an abundant mindset and collaboration over competition and all those types of things.
Yeah, it's the rising tide raises all ships, right?
I was just thinking, how you agreed that a lot of your guests on your show have shared similar experiences about law school and confidence and things like that, but no one would have talked about it in law school and really outside of this podcast, because I feel like you have very open individuals who are willing to share their stories and things like that. It's not really common outside of these types of conversations unless it's one-on-one because of that mask of perfection and competition. And I just wanted to highlight that courage is contagious, which is, when you share something about how you were feeling or thinking, then your guests can, or just in one-on-one conversations and with our social media, courage is contagious. And when we open up and we share, it helps people feel less alone. And it also helps us feel less alone, because I realize the more that I open up and the more I share in these courageous conversations, I'm not the only one. And it feels amazing, because for so long, it did feel like I was the only one having certain thoughts or feelings or experiences.
When we're not talking about it, it feels as though we are absolutely on an island by ourselves and we're the only one experiencing that challenge or that feeling. But it is courageous to talk about our fears and our shortcomings. And I actually love talking about my failures. I never used to be that way. I don't know if it's therapy or the fact that I'm, proud of where I am now. I never used to be the kind of person that loved talking about my failures. And now it's one of my favorite things to talk about.
I think that's great, because many people don't. And I think it's because there's a lot of fear and shame around failure, as if you're the only one who has failed, and everybody experiences failure. And when people share their failure stories, it helps them relate to other people. So I'm so glad that you do. In one of my keynotes, I talk about failure and how it significantly impacted my life. So I think it's important to talk about those things to prepare others for when they fail, because it is not if, it is when. And so many people in life are not failing because they're not trying. And it takes a lot of courage to try.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Whether you fail privately or you fail publicly, it takes courage to try. And I feel like that's why so many people don't see these examples of failure, because a lot of people want to stay comfortable in their comfort zone. And I always say, take action despite fear. And if you fail, really, if you're trying, you're not failing. It's part of success. You try again, you learn something, it's feedback, you try again, you become better. And you don't give up if it's important to you.
If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. You're not trying enough things. You're not putting yourself out there enough. I used to think that as a lawyer, like failure meant failure. Like failure was a bad thing, losing a case, losing a this, losing a that. And when I was getting ready to first chair my own trial, one of the partners who was helping me prepare told me, he's like, if you go through this whole career never having lost in court, you are not trying enough cases. He's like, if you finish your career as a litigator, like totally 100% wins, undefeated, you lost out on so many lessons you could have. Don't go trying to fail, but the lessons come from that. I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to try anyways. And maybe there's a version of me that can do this, and maybe I'm going to work to become. Maybe I can't do it right now, but maybe I can put in the work to become the version of me that can complete that. And how do I know unless I try?
I think a lot of people will agree that they learn a lot more from their failures than what they did when they were being successful, because there's a lesson or a blessing in so many of those experiences that we can apply in the future.
Would you give your prior, like your younger lawyer self, a piece of advice about, anything that you didn't know then that you maybe learned the hard way or are trying to implement now that you wish you would have known earlier?
I wish I would have known earlier that it's okay for dreams to change, because it took me a really long time to accept that. It's okay. That's not a failure. If you don't accomplish one particular dream, it's okay for them to change, because we change, we grow. So I wish I would have known that sooner. Another thing that I wish I would have known is that my uniqueness is my superpower. Instead of feeling the pressure to blend in, to be like the other students or other attorneys, and to put a mask on and be someone in order to feel accepted rather than feeling like I belong is who I am. I wish I would have known that my uniqueness is my superpower. And I've been able to meet so many incredible attorneys because I chose to show up as myself and post what I wanted to post and share what I wanted to share and not try to be like someone else.
One of my questions I wanted to ask you kind of as we're wrapping up was, what's one way people can be courageous?
So courage is going to be different for everyone, because what I might find challenging, it could be easy to somebody else. So one question that attorneys could ask themselves is, what would they do if they didn't care what other people thought?
Right.
What is one thing they would do if they didn't care what other people thought? Just see what comes up. I was asked this at a retreat that I attended one time, and different people use it as well for self-reflection. But what would you do if you couldn't fail? Because that gives you insight into things that you're not trying, things that you're not doing or pursuing. And that's where we can redefine failure and what success means and things like that. Because if you're trying, you're not really failing. But failure and the fear of failure holds so many people back from ever taking action. There's so many people, I imagine, want to start a podcast, but they have so much fear about whether it's going to be successful or not, or the challenges of getting it started, that they never take action. And then they live with this goal or dream, and then years pass and they'll live with reflecting on what if and what could have been. And also, attorneys, and myself included, it is so easy for us to think about worst case scenario and think about everything that could go wrong. So what I have to intentionally do, and it takes effort sometimes, is focus on the best case scenario. What if it all works out? What if it all goes right? What is the best case scenario?
Yeah, we absolutely have to think that way for our clients sometimes. How can this go bad? And how can we set ourselves up so that even if it does get there, how can we be ready? But doing that in your everyday life all the time is not, I would say, the best balance.
Right. And that's where we get to make a choice, one, to take courageous action, take action despite fear, and then trust ourselves to handle whatever happens.
Okay. I like to wrap up with a random question. It has nothing to do with anything we've talked about. And my question for you is, if you had to be on any sort of reality TV show, maybe not in a name, but like a theme of a TV show, whether it be adventure or cooking or whatever, what would you choose and why?
Oh my gosh. I think it would be fun to do something adventurous. But I like the concept of something adventurous, some challenging myself, doing something new that I haven't done before. Something competitive, obviously. There's a prize at the end. There's various things at stake. I think that would be fun.
I love your answer. Something competitive, doing something that you might not necessarily be an expert at, but learning how to do it with the component of adventure and challenge. That's like everything we've talked about makes life worth living. So I think that's a beautiful way to wrap it up. Where can people go? We've talked about your online presence. Where can people go to find you?
So I post really consistently on LinkedIn. They could just, I'm probably the only Brandy Wilson Edwards that shows up. They will notice me in pink. It's my favorite color, and that became my branding color. Yes. And then my website is www.brandywilsonedwards.com, which they can reach out if they're interested in any speaking related engagements. I would love to do my first international speaking engagement. So that would be fun.
Put it out there.
Yes, put it out there.
We're putting it out into the universe.
Yes.
Brandy wants to go international.
Yes, I have my passport. It's ready.
There you go.
I want to see you take off.
Well, then I guess I'm going to Yemen.
I think that we have to tell people our goals and dreams. Some people think that we should keep it, close to us and not really share. But I think if you don't share what it is that you want to do, you never know who's listening and who could help you or make an introduction or anything like that. So I'm a big advocate. We have to share our goals and dreams while we also believe in what's possible. I know you're interviewing me and asking questions, but now I have to ask you, what is one goal or dream that you have? I would love to, I want to hear it. And then who knows who might be listening that could help you.
My goal for 2025 for Non-Billable Hours was to have at least 5 guests. And I think you're my 7th.
Oh, nice.
And then a non-law, non-podcast related goal is, I've signed up for my first marathon in October.
That's amazing.
So my goal is to finish it.
That's a good goal to finish.
Thank you.
Training for a marathon? What? You don't train for a marathon, you just run it.
And then I would love, my bucket list dream for running would be to complete 100-kilometer or 100-miler race.
Barney, we're talking about 42 kilometers.
Thanks, Canada. I'll take it from here. Barney, it's 26 miles.
Is the fact that you did it and not the time or amount of time it takes to do it. Exactly. So I think it's great to detach from that outcome and just go in with, I'm going to finish this, and it doesn't matter how long it takes me.
And I truly think that your international speaking engagement, that's going to happen. It's you are filled with such a positive energy.
Well, I'll make sure you have front row VIP seating for that international event.
I will.
We're putting it out there.
I will go wherever it is. I will fly, I will drive, I will train. Thank you, Brandy. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you. I've just loved this so much, and I really appreciate your time and your energy and your...
I appreciate the invitation. I love what you're doing.
Thank you. Back at you. Thank you so much for listening in on my conversation with Brandy. Told you she was amazing, and I can't think of anyone better to have been my first international guest. I hope her story reminded you, as it reminded me, that being a lawyer is just one part of who we are. Courage isn't about not having fear, but it's about having the fear and doing it anyways. If something in this episode sparked a thought or inspired you, I would love for you to leave a comment down below, letting me know what you think. I reply to every single comment, even the ones by bots that tell me that my channel sucks and they can help me with my SEO. I respond to those too. So if I respond to those, I will respond to you. There's 2 buttons down there. There's a like button and a subscribe button, and both of them are free, which is a bargain in this economy. So if you could please support this channel by clicking one or both, that would really, really be appreciated. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, rating it, leaving a comment, subscribing, that would also be amazing. And until next time, take care of yourself, go outside, touch some grass, and remember what Brandy said, which is you are more than just a lawyer. And I think we just need to all take care of the parts of ourselves that are not lawyers. All right, until next time, bye. Andrew's not here to do something weird. I want to work with my hair. All right, I didn't burn the place down. Woohoo!